Charge up those batteries and plug into the future. Today is our second episode in the podcast series, Charged Up. We are buzzing with excitement to explore the latest and greatest electric vehicle models hitting the streets. From sleek sedans to rugged SUVs, we dissect each announcement, unpacking the features, performance, and driving force behind these electrifying rides. Join us as we navigate the electrifying landscape of tomorrow's transportation. Our second episode is all about luxury electric vehicles, where we look at the Jeep Wagoneer S, Mercedes-Benz G-Wagen EV, and the Cadillac Escalade IQ. Let's get charged up. Hello and welcome back to the podcast today. Sebastian from Kilowatt Station is joining us. How are you today, Sebastian?
Great.
All right. Good to hear. So today is part 2 of our Charged Up series, where we look at new and upcoming EVs to hit the market. Today's groups of vehicles is titled EV Sebastian and I will never be able to afford, because that's right. We're looking at luxury and high-end EUVs and EV SUVs. We'll be highlighting the Jeep Wagoneer S, the Mercedes-Benz G Class EV, also known as the G-Wagen, and the Cadillac Escalade IQ. So first up, we have the Jeep Wagoneer S. This will be Jeep's first battery electric SUV, punching 600 horsepower, dual motors with a 300-mile estimated range, and a 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Not too shabby. This will be built with a 400-volt architecture with DC fast charge rate of 20 to 80% in 23 minutes. I think that will not be the case. And we expect the car to arrive in the fall of 2024 in dealer showrooms. All right, Sebastian, tell us a little bit more about this Jeep Wagoneer S.
Yeah, so just being honest, I'm not super excited about this one. Everything about it just kind of seems meh to me. And for this to be Jeep's first effort EV, it kind of doesn't seem like it hits the mark. You mentioned, that it's got a 400-volt battery pack, which is really weird to me because it's built on Stellantis' STLA large platform. And every other vehicle Stellantis has announced on that platform has used an 800-volt pack. So it's a little weird that Jeep's flagship is going to use what's considered now an older architect pack, basically. And because it's a 400-volt pack, I struggle to see how, when I was looking, I believe it was 10 to 80% was 23 minutes. And I struggle to see how, it's a 100 kilowatt hour pack. How's it going to add 70 kilowatt hours in 20 minutes at a low voltage without just requiring an obscene amount of amperage, Yep. I feel like it's going to be one of those that you have to have just the right charger and just the right temperature. Everything will have to line up just perfectly for you to maybe even think about meeting that rate. And also, Jeep isn't telling us what the actual max charge rate is because I have a feeling they don't know yet. It's also weird to me. Jeep has, in all their marketing stuff and in the original press releases and a lot of the original reviews, people were comparing it to the Model Y, which in my mind, the Wagoneer is more of a Model X R1T competitor, especially considering it's supposed to start at 71,000 or 72,000. That said, the interior does look really nice. It's got, the 45 inches of display and on that front dash and a panoramic sunroof, beefed up sound system. It is also only a 5-seater. It's not a 3-row, which I was a little surprised to learn.
So yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, if you look at compared to the Kia EV6, that's an 800-volt architecture car with a 77 kilowatt hour battery, I believe, which charges 20 to 80% in, I believe, 18 minutes. So I don't know where they're getting their charge time from for a 400-volt car, unless it's going to rip 350 kilowatts from 20 to 70% and then nosedive. I just don't see where they're getting that number from. I'd be interested to see, how that holds up in real life. But I totally agree with you. If you're gonna release a Wagoneer, everyone knows Wagoneers are luxury and Wagoneers are 3 rows. So I don't know why they didn't make it a 3-row. So
you threw out that 350 kilowatt number just for perspective. If it's a 400-volt car, that's 875 amps of power.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any hardware on the market currently that can do that.
No. So I'm probably guessing a 20 to 80% in 30, 35 minutes is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, if that's probably more likely.
30, be like a 32, 34 minute, kind of like what we're seeing with the other cars. Yeah. But you're right. It does have a really cool slick interior. It has that long dash, which is pretty cool. So I'm interested to see how well Jeep kind of just has not gotten their feet wet too much here in the U.S. market with EVs. They have a couple of their 4xEs and things like that, which are pretty good, plug-in hybrids. So it'll be interesting to see how well they do.
They've said, I guess, their second EV is going to be kind of the electric Wrangler, which in my mind, that seems like a more Jeep vehicle to have started
Mm-hmm.
with. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't work in marketing. Maybe they know something I don't.
Yeah, because that could compete directly with like the what's the R1 coming out or the RT coming out.
Mhm.
Compete with that in the market too and things like that. So, all right, next up is one that we will surely never be able to afford. It has a long name. We're just going to call it the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon EV. One of the highlights of this EV is the 4 individually controlled motors, each mounted near the G-Wagon wheels. So we'll be a quad motor, not a quad motor, a what? What do we call that? Yeah, quad motor.
No.
The
Yeah, quad
motors will
motor.
combine for 579 horsepower, which will make it a performance powerhouse vehicle. Estimated 0 to 60, 4.6 seconds, which is pretty impressive because it is a boxy EUV, kind of very similar to like the Kia EV9. Pricing for the G Class is expected to come in, pretty cheap, 170K, not too bad. In the first year release, it will only come in the loaded edition. So they're starting out, going all out with the loaded edition. It will have a large 116 kilowatt hour battery with a 10 to 80% charge of around 30 minutes, which seems more realistic. The EV will also feature underneath body plates to protect it because if you're owning one of these, you're probably most likely going to be taking it off-road in some fashion. All right, Sebastian, do you have anything to add about the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon EV?
Yeah, so you hinted on it a little bit. The name is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's a case of Mercedes has committed to putting EQ in all their EV names, and then they wanted to call this the G-Wagon, and they didn't want to call it like the EQG or anything. And so its official name is the Mercedes-Benz G580 with EQ technology. Say that, every time you tell someone about the car.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That said, everything else is, pretty sweet looking in typical G fashion. Of course, should be pretty sweet, $170,000.
Yep.
But they have, baked some off-road goodies into the vehicle for all 3 of them that ever leave the pavement in Beverly Hills.
Yep. That's probably
it's
about
gonna,
it.
you mentioned the quad motor system, and they've shown off the vehicle has an ability to do what's called a tank turn, so where it can kind of spin around without actually leaving the place it's in. I don't imagine that's very good on the vehicle, especially on tires or anything, but it's one of those things, it's never going to get used. But they also, showed off it'll have virtual diff lockers, it'll have crawl control, some torque vectoring systems, etc. They're also adding some audio gimmicks to it, which I'm indifferent to. It's going to do the whole thing where when you floor it, it'll like rumble on the inside to mimic the sound of a V8, and it's just, you drive an electric car, like you bought the electric G-Wagon, commit to it.
Yep.
They haven't told us pack voltage or anything, but they are claiming a peak of 200 kilowatt charge rate. So, it's pretty solid. It's not leading the pack by any means. I think R1 will do like 240 kilowatt in its current iteration. And then, cheaper EVs like the 800 volt stuff, you're hitting 300, 350, or not, or more expensive like the competitor hitting 300, the next competitor hitting 350 kilowatt on a charger.
Yep. So yeah, so looking at some of the exterior interior photos here, I mean, I really do like the interior here. I like how the dash is set up. It's pretty cool. Kind of like they call it the cockpit display, where it kind of looks like you're sitting in like an actual like airplane cockpit. It looks like you have a little, the circle dash up here. It shows you what's going on with the wheels and tires and everything like that. What I don't like about these cars is this is a G-Wagon. Everyone knows the G-Wagon is kind of, synopsis with that cool front. And the fronts on these have that plastically cover front. I mean, that's what all EVs have. But when you're talking luxury, I know kind of Mercedes and BMW has kind of gotten this rap too. They have that cheap looking front on these luxury EVs. I wish they could figure out a way to give it a luxury looking front with that grille. But I don't know if I don't even know if that's even possible.
Yeah, and this kind of reminds me similar to, when Tesla first started, the Model S had kind of the fake grille. It had the black cutout, and they eventually moved away from it to where instead it's got the super thin, the super thin vent, and then the solid front. And I almost wonder how long it's going to be before the rest of the legacy automakers maybe make the same design decisions to, we can get away with not actually putting a grille on the vehicle.
Yep. It almost looks like they put a grill on it, and then they put like a piece of clear plastic over it. So it just doesn't, aesthetically, it just doesn't look that cool. So, but everything else about the car looks cool. It's got that, still looks like a G-Wagon, that boxy look.
Oh yeah.
I'll be curious. I think, with that I believe it's that 0 to 60, or not 0 to 60, the 30-minute charge for 80%. That's probably more realistic. I still think it's going to be tough with a 116 kilowatt battery to even achieve that. But it's probably going to have to cook if it does that. All right. So last up, we have the Cadillac Escalade IQ from GM. I would say this is the beast of the bunch. It's starting at around 130K, so it's cheaper. Kind of sits right in the middle between the two that we looked at. The IQ features rear wheel steering, 24-inch wheels, and a 55-inch center display. So we're going from one door to the other, basically. Upwards of 750 horsepower, range up to 450 miles. So first thing I think of, this is kind of like Silverado, packed with a 200 kilowatt battery, kind of like Silverado, and the ability to add 100 miles of charge in 10 minutes. Still don't know why GM does that with their charging. They do it with all their cars.
Yeah.
They don't tell you how long. They just tell you what you're going to get in 10 minutes.
Right.
The vehicle will feature the crab walk, which Cadillac is calling arrival mode. I don't understand why. I guess because you're pulling up somewhere and you're going to park it.
It's to show off in the valet line.
I guess so. You can also expect the Super Cruise GM's driver assist technology and the parallel park assist feature, which I think would be, their arrival mode. All right, Sebastian, you're the GM guru. What else can we expect from the Cadillac Escalade IQ?
Yeah, so you hinted on it a little bit, but this is, this will be the new flagship vehicle on the Ultium platform. And even though I don't like the name of it, it kind of goes, we talked about it with the Mercedes, how they felt the need to put the EQ gimmick on it. Well, Cadillac's gimmick is IQ. And so that's why it's the lyric with IQ instead of IC, and the optic and the celestic. But then they wanted to make an Escalade, and how are you going to make an Escalade without calling it an Escalade? Oh, we'll just throw IQ on the end of it. Anyway, It's dumb, but they do what they want. But it does use the powertrain from the Silverado EV RST, or at least it appears to. It seems to be the same kind of, very, very similar specs. It is not using the tri-motor setup that's found in the Hummer EV, interestingly. But they're taking, powertrain and putting it in a giant 3-row SUV. It's using the same 200 kilowatt hour-ish pack that you found in the Silverado EV and Hummer EV. And since it's the same pack, we can assume it'll probably have very, very similar charging performance, which we've seen on Silverado EV, like 360, 370 kilowatt charging, if you can get to the right, the right dispenser. A kind of cool party trick on the interior is, you mentioned that 55-inch display that it does indeed go like from the edge of a driver cockpit all the way to the passenger door. And the actual passenger screen is technically a separate screen on that. And the reason they did that is because the screen is polarized so that the driver can't see it. And since the driver can't see it, they're allowed to do stuff like, you can play Netflix or Hulu or YouTube or whatever while the vehicle is in drive. So your passenger can actually watch stuff in the front seat while you're, doing whatever, which is pretty cool. I don't know if there's any other EV doing that. I am curious to know once they start delivering these, how does it handle sound? Like, you have to pair headphones to it? Is it just going to be playing the audio from your TV show out on the speakers? Kind of how does that work?
Or something you can plug in a extra, which no one plugs in microphones anymore unless you're doing podcasts.
Yeah, it's like,
right?
I
Unless
imagine surely if you're going to go external headphones, Bluetooth would be an option because that's what everybody has now. It's also got some cool stuff, like it'll have the option to do auto open close doors like Model X used to have. They'll use radar to keep them from bumping anything. They're not using camera or anything like that. And the way they've described it is like, when you approach it with the key just in your pocket, it'll actually auto present the door. You don't have to hit a button or anything like that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
I can see it potentially being annoying if you're just trying to like walk near your car. It's kind of like similar. Our friend Jason, his lyric, it lights up every time he just gets close to it, even if he's not actually trying to interact with the car. I almost wonder if it'll do a similar thing, like you'll just be kind of standing close to your car and then the door just opens and you're like, oh, don't do that.
Yep.
And they're also, you can option it too, where all four, or the two front and the two second row seats, can be heated, ventilated, and massaging.
Oh, okay. So yes,
I didn't see any mention. I would assume
while driving.
Well, hey, Super Cruise, don't do that. That's not recommended.
Not recommending.
Interestingly, there is no mention. I would assume in a vehicle this expensive, the third row seats are probably also heated. I believe R1 will have. I think R1 has heated third row, but they didn't mention it anywhere, and I would be shocked though if it wasn't.
Yeah, me too. So one thing I'm looking at these pictures that interests me is called the executive second row seat. So it looks like there's a display in the back here, like behind the passenger driver's side seat. Is that optional, or is that like the high end model, or is that something you can add later?
Yeah, I believe that is an option, because you notice it says available there.
Yep.
That said, I imagine that behind the headrest seat is similar to kind of what we've seen in some of the other, like in the Tahoes and Suburbans and Yukons. They have a similar, you could option like a rear seat entertainment package, and they have like, and it connects kind of to the infotainment, and will use like your car's data plan to do Netflix and Hulu and everything. And I believe they also just have like an HDMI port.
Yeah. I was wondering if those things, maybe if they pop off or they tuck back in or something like that, where they're not out the whole time. I
think they're just fixed.
Those are displays. Yeah, cool. All right, Sebastian. So you have unlimited funds. You get to choose one of these cars. Which one are you taking?
Probably the Escalade. It seems like it might be the nicest of the bunch. You know, G-Wagons are nice cars, but I've always heard like once you actually start, they drive like an off-road vehicle a lot of times, and that makes sense because that's really what they are. They're off-road vehicles that look really cool. They look really nice, but you know, at the end of the day, I think you might get tired of driving it around all the time. I think I would take the Escalade because also it has to me like the most next-gen EV tech in it. You know, it's got Super Cruise, it's got that 800-volt battery pack, you know, super high-speed charging, and then all these luxury features, you know, on top of that. Yeah,
compared to what you get in the IQ, compared to the G-Wagon, it's $40,000 cheaper. I mean, you're talking about 130 starting to 170 starting. But I'm sure if you want top of the line, you're going to get around 150, 170 probably for that car. But still, starting out, it's going to be relatively cheaper, and it screams luxury. And when you look at that car, you're like, man, that's a luxury. That's a luxury SUV. I mean, that screams
it's an
money.
Escalade. It looks like an Escalade.
It looks Escalade. Yeah, it looks like you should be rolling up to a hotel in Beverly Hills or something like that, and someone should be opening the door for you. I mean, that's what it looks like. So yeah, if I had to choose, I would also take the Cadillac Escalade IQ. So pretty good. We got 3 great new cars coming out. I believe none of these are on the road yet. I believe the Wagoneer is set to come out sometime this year. The Escalade is set to come out this year. I don't know when the G-Wagon is set to come out. I didn't find that, but all these are set to come out, I think, soon.
So I know for sure that the Escalade has been spotted on roads semi-frequently testing, and the G-Wagon has too. Our friend Frank JT, who has Franklin Charging in Little Rock, he actually posted a picture of one had stopped at his station at Little Rock and was charging. And he was like, oh, it's pretty cool.
Yes.
So they're at least testing that one out.
Yep. All right. So thank you, Sebastian, for joining us today. And the next question is, which one of these would you choose? So leave us a comment below and let us know if you are feeling the Wagoneer S, the Mercedes G-Wagon EV, or the Escalade IQ. We want to thank you all for joining us today on our latest episode of Charged Up. You can follow Sebastian on X at Kilowatt Station, and you can follow us at the EV Geek. Everyone have a great day, and we will see you on our next episode. So long, everyone.
Bye, y'all.